The Camp Nou is under siege. Atletico Madrid are 2 goals up. Barcelona are down to 10 men. And Marcus Rashford, the player Manchester United sold the rights to for just £26 million, is standing over a free kick in a Champions League quarter-final with everything on the line. The ball leaves his boot. It crashes against the crossbar. The stadium erupts. And in that single moment, the entire Manchester United transfer saga surrounding this man crystallises into one devastating image: a player performing at this level, a buy option at that price, and a club watching from a distance, unable to do anything about either. But that is just one thread in a story that is unravelling at speed right now. Because while Rashford is fighting for Champions League history in Spain, back in Manchester, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is drawing up a list of 8 players he wants out of the building this summer. A £100 million clear-out is being planned. A managerial decision that will shape everything is being delayed. Transfer targets are being lost to Manchester City one by one. Elliot Anderson has already said no. Angelo Stiller could disappear overnight. And the clock on Denzel Dumfries is ticking louder, with every day Inter Milan wait for his answer on a contract extension that would wipe out his release clause entirely. Manchester United are at a crossroads, and every single decision made in the next 60 days will either accelerate the rebuild or set it back by another season. This is where we are, and this is where we begin. Rio Ferdinand on Marcus Rashford to Barcelona for £26 million. Rio Ferdinand has come out and said clearly that if Barcelona get the version of Rashford that is currently performing at the Nou Camp for £26 million, it is a massive steal. He also added that he wishes Rashford the best and hopes he thrives at Barcelona. Now let us stop there and talk about what that statement actually means. Rio Ferdinand is not just any pundit. He is someone who watched Marcus Rashford develop at this club from the very beginning. He knows what Rashford is capable of at his best. And the fact that he is publicly calling £26 million daylight robbery tells you everything about the gap between the buy option Barcelona hold and what Rashford is actually showing on the pitch right now. The £26 million buy option that Barcelona have was agreed when Rashford was at his lowest point at Manchester United. His performances had collapsed, his form had disappeared, and the club essentially pushed him out on loan to get his confidence back. That fee made sense at that time. But here is the problem. When Rashford went to Barcelona and immediately looked like a different player, the form returned, the goals and assists came. And now that £26 million figure looks completely out of step with reality, Ferdinand is right. If Barcelona exercise that option, Manchester United will have essentially funded a Barcelona attacker for next to nothing. And that is a situation the club must think very carefully about in the weeks ahead. Hansi Flick speaks on Rashford and the €30 million question. Barcelona manager Hansi Flick has publicly stated that he is very happy with Marcus Rashford. He confirmed Rashford scored an important goal and has shown his quality throughout the season. However, when asked about Rashford's future and specifically about the €30 million fee being discussed, Flick gave a measured and careful response. He said he cannot say anything about the future and that the focus must remain on finishing the season. Here is what that tells us as analysts. Flick is not dismissing the idea of keeping Rashford. If he wanted to, he could have simply said the club will make decisions in the summer and moved on. Instead, he spoke warmly and specifically about the player's quality and contributions. That is deliberate. Managers choose their words carefully in press conferences. The fact that he praised Rashford so directly while refusing to close the door on a permanent deal suggests Barcelona are keeping their options open. The €30 million figure being floated is significant. It is above the £26 million buy option, but still represents exceptional value for a player contributing at this level. The situation is that Barcelona hold the power in this negotiation, and Manchester United are largely at their mercy unless they walk away from the deal entirely. More on that shortly. Rashford's Barcelona statistics: 21 goal contributions in 2,155 minutes. The numbers are extraordinary. Marcus Rashford has registered 11 goals and 10 assists in just 2,155 minutes for Barcelona. 21 goal contributions across La Liga, the Champions League and the Copa del Rey. And this is a player who has not even been a regular starter throughout the season. Let that sink in for a moment. 21 goal contributions as a non-regular starter. That is elite output by any measure. That is the kind of return that top clubs pay 60, 70, 80 million pounds for in the current market. And yet Manchester United agreed to a buy option of just £26 million before any of this happened. The evidence is clear. Rashford needed a fresh environment to rediscover himself. Barcelona gave him that environment, and the result is a player performing at a level that makes the original loan fee look like a rounding error. question for Manchester United is now a business one as much as a footballing one. If they refuse to allow the £26 million option to go through and recall Rashford, they get back a player who is now high on confidence and potentially valuable again. But then what? Does he fit into the new project? Is there a market for him at a higher price? These are questions the club must answer very quickly. Andre Onana to be sold this summer despite wanting to return. It is now clear that Manchester United intend to sell Andre Onana this summer. Onana is currently on loan at Trabzonspor and still has 2 years remaining on a £120,000 per week contract. He has publicly expressed a desire to return to Old Trafford and fight for his place. However, the club has no plans to reintegrate him. Sene Lammens has established himself as the #1 goalkeeper, and the priority at the club is reducing the wage bill rather than maintaining expensive backup options. This is a straightforward and sensible business decision. Paying £120,000 per week for a goalkeeper who is not in your plans is not sustainable, especially when the club needs funds to reinforce other areas. The reality for Manchester United is that Onana, despite his desire to return, represents a cost the club cannot justify carrying into the next chapter. The key challenge will be finding a buyer willing to absorb that wage level. Trabzonspor are unlikely to have the financial power to make the loan permanent at those figures. This could become a complex negotiation, but the intention from the club is clear. Onana will not be part of Manchester United's future plans, Manchester United's summer transfer plans. Midfielders, a left-back and a managerial decision. The situation heading into the summer window is significant. With Champions League qualification now secured, substantial funds are expected to be made available. A busy transfer window is being planned with at least one marquee midfielder targeted, possibly two. A new left-back is also a priority, particularly given concerns about Luke Shaw's ability to handle the demands of both Premier League and European football simultaneously. And then there is the managerial question. A final decision on whether Michael Carrick continues beyond the interim role or whether a new permanent appointment is made is expected before the season ends. This is arguably the most important decision of the entire summer. Every other piece of planning, every transfer target identified, every squad decision made flows from who is sitting in that manager's chair when pre-season begins. The club is right to resolve this before the window opens rather than after. Signing players without clarity on the manager's identity and preferred system is a recipe for wasted money. The evidence from Carrick's 10 games suggests he has stabilised the club and built genuine belief in the dressing room. Whether that is enough to convince the ownership to make him permanent is the central question of United's immediate future. The financial value of Champions League football for Manchester United. Football finance expert Kieran Maguire has laid out exactly what Champions League qualification means in financial terms for a club of Manchester United's size. Qualifying alone brings approximately £30 million immediately. Performance bonuses add around €2 million per win and €700,000 per draw. The club is guaranteed at least 4 home games and possibly up to 8. For a club of United's stature, each home match generates approximately £8 million in gate receipts alone. That is up to £30 million from tickets before any other income is considered. Combined with the £30 million participation fee and a £10 million Adidas bonus, the minimum guaranteed figure reaches £70 million. If the club goes deep in the competition, the realistic projection is closer to €120 million. And if they were ever to win the competition, the prize pool earned by last year's winners was approximately €150 million, with the additional benefit of qualifying for the FIFA Club World Cup, which earned Chelsea around £80 million. This context is essential when evaluating United's summer transfer strategy. Champions League football does not just add prestige, it fundamentally changes what the club can afford to spend, what players they can attract, and how quickly the rebuilding process can be accelerated. Sire Jim Ratcliffe planning a major summer clear-out to raise £100 million. This is one of the most significant stories of the entire cycle. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is planning to sell or release 8 senior players this summer with a target of raising at least £100 million. The goals of the operation are to cut the wage bill, comply with Premier League spending rules and free up funds for new signings. Players identified for permanent exits include Marcus Rashford, Andre Onana, Joshua Zirkzee and Manuel Ugarte. The club is braced for potential losses on Zirkzee and Ugarte given what they paid for them. Additionally, Casemiro, Jadon Sancho and Tyrell Malacia are set to leave as free agents. Casemiro's £350,000 per week wages represent a significant saving on their own. The evidence suggests this is not panic selling. This is a deliberate and structured effort to reshape the squad, reduce the bloated wage bill, and bring the club in line with financial regulations. The challenge is that several of these players, particularly Xerxes and Ugarte, may not attract fees that reflect their original transfer costs. The club must be prepared to accept losses in the short term to create long-term financial health. Manchester City have entered the race for German wonderkid Kenneth Eichhorn, a 16-year-old who is also linked to Manchester United for a summer transfer. The player is attracting strong interest from multiple Premier League clubs and top Bundesliga sides as well. This is a rumour at this stage. No deal is close, no fee has been agreed. However, the competition from Manchester City is a complication United will have to deal with. City have an established track record of developing young talent, and that record makes them an attractive destination for players of this age profile. United's ability to convince a 16-year-old to choose them over City will depend heavily on the project they present, the manager they appoint, and the clarity of their vision going forward. All of those factors remain unresolved right now. Midfield update: Mainoo, Matheus Fernandes, Elliot Anderson and Amadou Onana. There are several layers to Manchester United's midfield planning for next season. Kobbie Mainoo is on the verge of signing a new contract and is viewed internally as an untouchable cornerstone of the club's future. That is positive and important news. Captain Bruno Fernandes has reportedly recommended Matheus Fernandes as a potential long-term successor in the midfield, though Manchester City are expected to provide competition for that signing as well. Other targets include Elliot Anderson, who carries an asking price of between £100 and £120 million, and Amadou Onana. It is important to note that Elliot Anderson is described here as a target, meaning this is at the rumour and interest stage, not a confirmed deal. The broader picture is that Manchester United recognise their midfield needs significant investment. The departure of Casemiro and others leaves a clear void that must be filled with quality additions if the club is to compete in the Champions League next season. Julian Nagelsmann now has a 22% chance of becoming Real Madrid manager. This story matters for Manchester United because Nagelsmann has been identified as a major managerial candidate for the club. The situation is that prediction markets now show him with a 22% chance of being appointed as Real Madrid's next manager. This is important context. If Real Madrid move for Nagelsmann, he becomes unavailable to Manchester United. The pool of elite-level managerial candidates is not unlimited, and the club's planning must account for the possibility that certain targets may be taken off the table by competing clubs. This underlines why a managerial decision at Old Trafford must come sooner rather than later. Manchester City have been working on Elliot Anderson since February. The situation with Elliot Anderson is becoming clearer. Manchester City have been in active and serious conversations with Anderson's camp since February. Talks are advancing, though nothing has been finalised on fees or agreements. Discussions with Nottingham Forest will be the critical factor, influenced by Forest's Premier League status and their valuation of the player. Manchester United are attentive and have Anderson on their midfield shortlist, but the evidence suggests they are currently behind City in this race. This is a situation to monitor closely. If City complete this deal, United lose a priority target and must move quickly to identify alternatives. Rashford's historic Champions League statistic against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League quarter-final first leg, Marcus Rashford had 7 or more shots. This makes him only the second English player on record since 2003 to 2004 to achieve that in a Champions League knockout stage match. The first was Wayne Rooney, who had 9 shots for Manchester United against AC Milan in the 2009 to 2010 round of 16. This statistic tells a story beyond just the shot count. It tells you that Rashford was fully engaged, that he was relentless in his attempts to influence the game, and that despite not scoring, he was at the centre of everything positive Barcelona tried to create going forward. A player with that level of fight and ambition in a Champions League quarter-final is not a player you let go for £26 million. The evidence is right there in the numbers. Manchester United and Liverpool battling for Denzel Dumfries for around £20 million. Inter Milan's Denzel Dumfries has a release clause of €25 million, which translates to approximately £22 million. Inter are offering him a 1-year contract extension worth approximately £4.3 million per season. But the critical detail is that signing that extension would remove the release clause. Manchester United and Liverpool both have the opportunity to sign Dumfries for around £20 million if they act before he signs that extension. This is an important story for United given their identified need for a left-back. Dumfries is primarily a right-back or wing-back, so his positional fit needs to be considered carefully. But the value available here is significant. At around £20 million with Champions League pedigree, he represents the kind of smart, value-driven signing the club should be pursuing. This is a rumour at this point, but it is one worth watching very closely given the timeline created by Inter's extension offer. Michael Carrick praises Harry Maguire after new contract signing. Michael Carrick has spoken warmly about Harry Maguire following the defender's new contract extension at Manchester United. Carrick highlighted Maguire's performances for the club and his importance to the England national team over the recent international break. He described the clarity and stability that the new contract brings as important and expressed delight that the deal had been completed. This is a straightforward and positive story. Maguire has clearly rebuilt his reputation under Carrick's management. The fact that the club moved to secure him on a new deal reflects genuine belief in him as part of the long-term defensive structure. Marco Materazzi calls the Scot McTominay sale one of the biggest transfer mistakes ever. Marco Materazzi, the former Inter Milan and Italy defender, has described Manchester United's decision to sell Scot McTominay to Napoli for just £26 million as one of the biggest transfer mistakes he has ever seen, given the form McTominay has shown in Italy. Looking at this story alongside United's desperate need for midfield reinforcement this summer, it is hard to argue with that assessment. McTominay left for a modest fee and has gone on to become a key performer in Serie A. Meanwhile, the club is now targeting midfielders who cost between £40 and £120 million. The situation is that United created a gap in their squad, received very little financial compensation for doing so, and are now paying a premium to fill that gap. That is not good planning. It is a cautionary tale about the cost of short-term thinking in the transfer market. Manchester United, one of 4 Premier League clubs chasing Denzel Dumfries, confirming what we discussed earlier. Manchester United are officially one of 4 Premier League clubs preparing to pursue Denzel Dumfries from Inter Milan. The release clause of €25 million is the key figure here. The competition from 3 other Premier League clubs adds urgency to the situation. As if United are serious about Dumfries as a target, they cannot afford to move slowly. The combination of the release clause and Inter's extension offer creates a short window in which this deal must either happen or become unavailable. Angelo Stiller attracting Manchester United interest with a €40 million release clause. Stuttgart midfielder Angelo Stiller is attracting serious Premier League interest, and Manchester United are among the clubs willing to trigger his €40 million release clause. However, there is a critical complication. Stuttgart hold the power to remove that release clause themselves simply by paying around €2 million. The clause can be eliminated at any time, and if Stuttgart do that, Stuttgart remains contracted until 2028 with no escape route for interested clubs. This means the window to sign Stuttgart at €40 million could close suddenly and without warning. The player would have no say in the decision and would simply continue under contract with the clause gone. This is a situation where Manchester United must decide quickly. Either they are committed to triggering that clause now, or they risk finding the option disappear entirely. Elliot Anderson rejects Manchester United. Manchester City now leading. This is perhaps the most disappointing story in this entire cycle for Manchester United fans. Nottingham Forest midfielder Elliot Anderson has reportedly rejected interest from Manchester United, with Manchester City now leading the race for his signature. City are optimistic about completing a deal worth around £65 million. Their aim is to secure the 23-year-old before the World Cup to avoid a potential rise in his value following tournament exposure. The reality for the club is that Anderson chose not to wait for United to formalise their interest. Whether that reflects uncertainty about United's project, doubts about the managerial situation, or simply a genuine preference for City, the result is the same. United must now move to alternative midfield targets without delay. Barcelona lose 2 NIL to Atletico Madrid. Rashford fights but cannot prevent defeat. Barcelona suffered a 2-0 defeat to Atletico Madrid in the first leg of their Champions League quarter-final at the Nou Camp. Marcus Rashford played 73 minutes before being replaced. He started on the left and moved up front after Pau Cubarsi's red card left Barcelona with 10 players. Spanish outlet Mundo Deportivo described Rashford as the best player on the pitch. They noted he tested the goalkeeper 3 times, had a goal ruled out for offside and struck the crossbar with a free kick. They called him brave, direct and a fighter. Marca were less generous, giving him a 5 out of 10 rating. They acknowledged his excellent runs and direct play, but pointed to his wastefulness in front of goal and the free kick that hit the crossbar as evidence that his lack of accuracy cost him on the night. Sport magazine gave him 6 out of 10, calling his display electric. They highlighted his energy and commitment in attack, but noted he faded slightly in the second half. Now, here is the analytical perspective. 3 different Spanish outlets assessed Rashford's performance, and not one of them dismissed him. Even the harshest review, the 5 out of 10 from Marca, acknowledged his quality in movement and involvement. The story of the night was not that Rashford played badly. The story was that he did almost everything right and still ended up on the losing side. A goal ruled out for offside, a free kick that struck the crossbar, 3 attempts that tested the goalkeeper. In a different game, on a different night, Rashford wins that match for Barcelona. The margin between a heroic performance and a frustrating one is razor thin, and the fact that he produced this level of application in a Champions League quarter-final, having gone the furthest in that competition than he ever managed in 10 years at Manchester United, tells you that the Barcelona move has genuinely reignited something in him. Barcelona now face an enormous task. They must travel to Madrid for the second leg on the 14th of April and overturn a 2-goal deficit. That is a very difficult challenge, but not impossible. And Rashford will know that if he can find the finish his efforts deserved in the first leg, he still has the chance to make Champions League history. Kensen Lamans credits Michael Carrick for transforming the mood at Manchester United. Michael Carrick has taken charge of 10 Premier League matches since being appointed following Ruben Amorim's dismissal in January. The record reads 7 wins and 1 defeat from those 10 games. Manchester United are currently 3rd in the Premier League table, 1 point ahead of 4th-placed Aston Villa. Senny Lamans, speaking to Sky Sports, gave a clear and honest assessment of what has changed at the club since Carrick arrived. He described the feeling within the group as really nice, spoke about the enjoyment of winning games and emphasised the collective ambition to go even better than current position. He also acknowledged the importance of taking each remaining game individually given how tight the top 4 race remains. Here is the analytical perspective on what this means. Carrick walked into a dressing room that had lost its direction. Amorim's tenure, despite the manager's qualities, resulted in a 6th-place standing and a dressing room that clearly was not cohering as a unit. Carrick, a man who played for this club and understands what it means to wear the shirt, appears to have reconnected the players with a simpler but more effective way of operating. 7 wins from 10 under interim conditions is not a fluke. It reflects tactical organisation, genuine player buy-in and a positive training environment. Lamans is the club's starting goalkeeper. He sees everything from his position. When a goalkeeper speaks about team feeling and collective ambition in those terms, it carries weight. The remaining 7 matches include tests against Chelsea and Liverpool. Those results will define whether United finish 3rd or fall to 4th or lower. But the evidence from Carrick's 10 games is that this group is capable of competing. The question remains whether the ownership will choose to build on that foundation by keeping him, or whether they will look elsewhere for a new permanent appointment. United host Leeds United at Old Trafford on the 13th of April in a Monday evening kick-off at 8 o'clock. That is the next opportunity to build momentum. And with the top 4 race this tight, every single point matters. Closing analyses. When you look at everything happening around Manchester United right now, a picture emerges of a club at a genuine crossroads. The foundations are being rebuilt. Champions League football is secured. The wage bill is being addressed. Young talent is being locked down and the dressing room has rediscovered belief under an interim manager who genuinely understands the club. But the decisions made in the next 8 to 12 weeks will define the next 3 to 5 years. The manager must be decided. The squad overhaul must be executed intelligently. Transfer targets must be secured quickly before rivals like Manchester City move faster. And the Rashford situation must be handled in a way that protects the club's financial interests rather than simply accepting a figure that was agreed before his remarkable Barcelona form began. The evidence is there, the direction is there. Now it comes down to execution. That is the full breakdown for today on Emma United Analyst. If this level of analysis is what you want every time a major Manchester United story breaks, then subscribe to this channel right now. Every detail, every implication, every story that matters. We cover it all here. Thank you for watching and we will see you in the next one.